Ultimately, how many issues does Starliner have in total? When will Boeing stop discovering new issues? The first crewed flight test of Starliner has revealed extremely serious issues, both recurring and completely new. Most recently, a critical flaw in the flight software has been detected, an absolute nightmare for both NASA and their astronauts. What on earth is happening, and just how bad can it get? Let's dive into that in today's episode. The Starliner mission has been riddled with issues from the start: helium leaks, thruster malfunctions, and now a completely new software problem. So, what's the issue here? Right now, Starliner can't undock without a crew on board, and according to the latest updates, they'll need at least 4 weeks to resolve this. What on earth happened? The public is abuzz with speculation, and Boeing, along with NASA, hasn't provided the level of detail and accuracy needed, at least not until the latest press conference. Let me break down what's really going on. A Boeing representative stated that the Starliner spacecraft has the ability to autonomously detach from the International Space Station. They've installed software that allows for this automatic undocking. However, the current mission parameters in the flight software are set up for a crewed operation. This means that when the spacecraft is near the station to perform docking and undocking, if any error occurs, the software automatically switches to manual control by the crew. This explanation is a mess, and it seems Boeing is trying to downplay the issue. Essentially, they're saying they installed the software, and now all they need to do is tweak a few parameters. Sounds easy, right? But this explanation highlights a serious lack of software completeness. Why was OFT-2 able to undock entirely automatically, but Starliner on this mission can't? What did they change in the software compared to the previous mission? Boeing hasn't explained this, but it's clear they didn't fully build out the software for CFT-1. This means that if anything unexpected happens outside of what's been programmed, the undocking would require human intervention. Boeing was evidently confident that the crew would return on Starliner, and they relied heavily on that. So when unforeseen issues arose, making it possible that Starliner might have to return without anyone on board, Boeing was caught off guard and became flustered. It seems Boeing didn't fully complete the software before launching CFT-1 because they wanted to simplify the QA process for the mission. And without a doubt, this is a catastrophic mistake. Boeing's explanation makes the software fix sound so straightforward, but in reality, working on aerospace software is an incredibly complex and time-consuming task. First, the software engineers need to define the specific requirements for the autonomous undocking, an essential step to ensure safety and efficiency. This involves not only setting the necessary parameters, but also identifying potential failure scenarios during the operation. Once these requirements are established, the engineers then have to develop or update the code to include the new mission parameters. Modifying existing code is no small feat. As Jim Chilton, Senior Vice President of Boeing Space and Launch, pointed out, the spacecraft has approximately 1 million lines of code. After making these changes, the engineers must test them through Boeing's integrated hardware and software test facility before the spacecraft can return. But it doesn't stop there. Boeing's flight control team also needs additional training and preparation for this process. They've said they need 4 weeks, but in reality, 4 weeks is a very tight timeline for everything Boeing has to do. The urgency in fixing the software strongly suggests that Starliner might return on its own, and NASA seems to be desperate. In a recent move, NASA has revealed a scenario they are seriously considering. Instead of staying for just 8 days as initially planned, Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams may have to live and work on the ISS for up to 8 months. Yes, you heard that right. They're stuck, and there's a very real possibility they won't return to Earth before February 2025. In this NASA scenario, the Dragon spacecraft from the Crew 9 mission will serve as a rescue vehicle. Specifically, NASA is considering launching Crew 9 to the ISS with just 2 astronauts, leaving 2 seats empty and bringing along 4 spacesuits. Once they reach the ISS, Butch and Sunita will become part of the Crew 9 team, participating in experiments and research over a 6-month period. Then, in February, all 4 astronauts would return to Earth aboard the SpaceX Crew Dragon. Essentially, Crew 9 is now a rescue mission. You know, even though Butch and Sunita are seasoned astronauts, they still need thorough preparation before heading to the ISS. To maintain their health and physical fitness for enduring the harsh conditions of space, they'll have to undergo rigorous physical training programs. Moreover, living and working in a zero-gravity environment can be mentally taxing, so the astronauts are also trained in stress management and keeping a positive outlook. This situation is far from ideal. Initially, they were only supposed to stay on the ISS for 8 days. Typically, an astronaut's stay on the ISS lasts around 6 months, and no one could have predicted that Butch and Sunita would be stuck there for up to 8 months. way beyond what was ever anticipated. I'm certain they weren't fully prepared, physically, mentally, or in terms of supplies, for such an extended period. This undoubtedly will impact not just their physical health, but could also have serious consequences for their mental well-being. We haven't heard anything from these two NASA astronauts for quite some time, but I know they're not doing well. And frankly, they don't have many options left. While it seems almost certain that the astronauts will return to Earth aboard SpaceX's Dragon, Steve Stick, NASA's director of the Commercial Crew Program, has pointed out that this scenario is still not officially approved. He mentioned that they're setting up contingency plans for various scenarios, indicating that the situation remains highly unstable and uncertain. Overall, the press conference felt like a joke, and uncertainty is probably the most accurate word to describe it. Questions about the safety and the astronauts' return plans were met with vague and unconvincing answers. Moreover, it seems NASA is also treading very carefully with their statements to avoid breaching any contract terms and facing potential legal action from Boeing. After all, NASA is the Mission Oversight Authority, and they were the ones who allowed Starliner to fly in the first place. NASA has promised to provide answers about the scenario they'll choose by mid-August, meaning they have just 1 week left to make this critical decision. It seems that the internal conflicts at NASA are still unresolved behind these public press briefings. A deep internal debate is raging within NASA about the pros and cons of bringing Butch and Sunita back on Boeing's Starliner or opting for another spacecraft. Although Boeing's Starliner was developed with high expectations, it has faced several severe issues, including thruster malfunctions and helium leaks during its mission to the International Space Station. Some engineers within NASA are confident that these problems don't compromise the mission's success, or at the very least, believe there are fixes that could safely bring them back to Earth. However, not all engineers share this view. Some vehemently oppose risking the astronauts' lives on a spacecraft that isn't fully proven. They argue that NASA should bring them back on another spacecraft while allowing the Starliner to return automatically to test whether its systems work correctly without the astronauts on board, but would also help NASA accurately assess Starliner's condition before deciding whether to greenlight its future missions. To put it bluntly, theoretical physicists are clashing with experimental physicists over the best way to get their people home. While no decision has been made yet, what are Boeing and NASA doing? Currently, Boeing and NASA are conducting tests both on the ground and in space to simulate the problems that the astronauts encountered during the journey to the ISS. Engineers believe the primary cause of the issue is overheating in the doghouse area, which affected the seals in the thrusters. Specifically, when the temperature rises, these seals expand, and as the temperature drops, they contract. This expansion blocks the flow of fuel to the thrusters. During the thruster tests that the astronauts performed while the spacecraft was docked with the ISS, the engines had enough time to cool down, so they didn't experience the overheating issues. However, when the spacecraft returns to Earth, the situation becomes far more complicated, and the ideal conditions for the thrusters no longer exist. These thrusters play a crucial role in performing delicate maneuvers, particularly in adjusting the spacecraft's attitude in space. This means the spacecraft needs to achieve the correct angle before separating from the service module. It appears that some engineers believe the Boeing Starliner might be safe for a short period after undocking from the ISS, just before overheating becomes an issue. However, if the Starliner doesn't move far enough away and encounters problems with the thrusters, the situation could turn extremely dangerous. The spacecraft could start to tumble, lose control, and potentially collide with the space station, creating an unprecedented disaster in spaceflight history. Crucially, the thrusters aren't just necessary during the initial phase of the return journey. They play a pivotal role in the entire re-entry process. They're essential for setting critical orbits, executing the necessary burns to control trajectory, and finally guiding the spacecraft as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere. If the thrusters don't operate precisely during this phase, it could jeopardize the safety of the astronauts and the mission itself. Given Boeing's fumbling and confusion in addressing these issues, it's almost certain that the astronauts won't be able to return home this year. Instead, they'll likely have to wait until next year to make a safe return to Earth. Sure, if this scenario plays out, the astronauts will be safe, but the ripple effects of CFT-1's failure won't stop there. The failure of Starliner will throw off the schedule of upcoming missions to the ISS. Most immediately, NASA has yet to decide whether the two astronauts bumped from Crew 9 will be reassigned to Crew 10. Typically, NASA assigns astronauts 2 years in advance to allow ample time for training. In this case, the astronauts are already qualified to work on the ISS and fly on the Dragon. NASA will need to reassess future schedules and determine what makes the most sense for the astronaut corps moving forward. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at the latest advancements in space technology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.